engineering is a particular branch of civil engineering which is in charge of protecting and safeguarding and in some cases enhancing the shoreline of our countries. These shorelines can belong to the sea environment, but also to the lake environment and sometimes also to river systems. As a coastal engineer, you would be responsible for the organization, conception, development and preservation of works in the coastal areas. Some typical jobs, and just some of those, are for example erosion prevention, flood control, artificial harbor construction, and dredging or central nourishment operations. Due to its location, but also the geomorphological characteristics, Netherlands has a long history of coastal constructions and strategies. Mainly, they are related to flood control systems, but in many cases, coastal engineers were used to plan land reclamation intervention to provide new land to a traditional small country, a country without enough land. For this reason, today I will present some of the more cutting-edge strategies and theories developed by Dutch engineers, architects, and in some cases also artists in relation to coastal interventions. But before that, let's step back a bit, and in particular to the 2003, when the Metropolis magazine published this study entitled Architects Pollute. This study was designed by a passive design architect and proponent, which published for the first time the data related to US pollution and greenhouse emissions, discovering that the main causes of greenhouse emissions are actually architectures, and with architectures he meant the buildings that we usually live every day, our houses, our offices, and not instead the industries or the transportation systems. This is strongly in contrast with our policymakers' vision, since recent policies are mostly directed to companies, industry and transportation. However, the result is clear. Almost 50% of these greenhouse emissions are caused by normal architectures. At this point, we have to introduce the problem and the most evident pressing problem of the current era, that is the climate change. The global climate change alone has the potential to completely disrupt the geopolitical landscape of our world. The responsibility to control global change, climate change, extends especially to the profession of architecture, because this profession is the major contributor to greenhouse emissions. On the other hand, we still live in an era where there is more and more need for new buildings and new housing. So we are in the era of urbanization, and consequently new architectures are going to be produced over and over. So the big challenge of the current era is between climate change and urbanization. The problem is that our cities in general lack of adaptive capacity. They are not resilient facing the change of our environment. So what happens is that while the environment continues to change, we live still in buildings that are 20, 50, sometimes 70 years old, while the environment around continues to change. At the same time, these buildings are not able anymore to answer to our needs because we are a dynamic society. So the idea is that we have to build for change, to build buildings able to adapt to the external and internal changes, to follow the desire of the society. The paradox here is that actually we have the technology to create this type of buildings, but there is still an old and traditional perception of architecture. So what needs to change is actually the perception of the architectures and of the building market itself, and not really, it's not necessary to introduce new technologies. This is at least the idea of the architect, Dutch architect Cohen Aldhuis, which is known as the floating Dutchman. And with float, we have to introduce its definition, and this is actually an acronym that stands for flexible land on aquatic territory. So what happens is that we think to our city like they are already full and completely urbanized. And this is actually not true, in the opinion of this architect, because since in the past this expansion was seen vertically, so through the introduction of the elevators and also the creation of the skyscrapers. In this area, we have to look at water, and the water is our new land. We have to exploit the water system to enlarge our cities. And actually this is possible because most of the important cities and towns are located close or in correspondence of water systems. But how to exploit the presence of the water? Creating floating buildings, floating functions better, that move from the land to occupy the aquatic territory. This function actually looks a lot like the existing functions, but they act in a completely different way because they float. They can change their position in relation to the need of the inhabitants and of the society. So our new cities would look a bit like this. So here we have a city that is seen like an hardware of a smartphone, for example, and this city is located close to a water system. So what happens is that all the new functions can be located in the water, and they can call it, they are sort of city apps, so that can be added and removed in relation to the need of the society, and then in a different moment for a different society they can be removed, they can be relocated. So the idea is that you pass from the project of these functions to product, and the product of course are these applications. So as our smartphone, we could have some application panel like this one, in which you can decide if you want housing system, if you want a park, if you want some sport facilities, but also if you want green spaces and highlands or streets. And all these apps are floating apps, so they stay on aquatic territory. But how to realize these floating functions? The thing is that in Netherlands and in many countries the technology already exists. So what happens is that while in the soil you can use a shallow foundation or piles, In water, you can use a concrete box to create the foundation of your house or of your building. So here you have a scheme. The idea is that the house over the foundation is completely the same as we know. It's a completely traditional house, but the behavior is completely new because this platform, that is also the foundation, can flow in the water and can change position in relation to the needs of the users. And when you need even more functions, for example, streets, green spaces, you can use even bigger foundations. You can produce those in the company and then just transport the small pieces in the water. And this foundation is created by a combination of foam and concrete to create large floating islands that of course then you can remove, you can dismantle, you can transport in another position. The architect Coin Holtus already also mentioned some trends that should lead us towards floating cities. So some reasons and advantages about choosing a floating city. And I will mention some of those because they can be interesting in vision of our project in the Garda Lake. So the main important benefit is that floating construction will allow a new type of sustainability, a completely new type. What happens is that, for example, in summer, the building can become really hot and the environment and the air is really hot, but the water stays always around 25 and 27 degrees. So what happens is that the water just can be forced to flow inside the walls and then go back using the columns. And in this way, the building can be controlled. The internal environment of the building can be controlled in a sustainable way. And from the architectural aesthetical point of view, this choice has some good effect on the idea of architecture and on the vision of architecture. So here you see these columns with the water inside, and this is water as well. Another important trend and advantages is that it is possible to create scarless development. What happens that our future generations maybe will not like or will not agree with the developments that we create today. So it's fair to allow the possibility to reverse the construction process and to remove our construction in the future to make space to new buildings, new development. So a scarless development. Here is an example. This is a project for an hotel in the Maldives that have a really little space available. And the idea is that every part of the system is a floating construction. And this allows at some point to remove the whole system when needed, when is needed to make some room for new functions or new constructions. So this is scarless development. The same principle can be applied to the urban fabric. So this is a coastal city. Here we have the shoreline, and here we have an addition. This is all a floating district on this concrete foam foundation, and as you see, the fabric is really similar to the existing one. It's the behavior that is completely different. So you can really expand the same urban fabric following the same tradition and typology of the city. And when you need to bring the situation back to the origin, you can just remove your addition. So you can also shrink the urban fabric to make space to new function and new needs for the future generation, for example. so expanding and shrinking urban fabric. These floating functions, of course, allow also flexible urban components. So the city is not fixed and static anymore, but it's created by a group, a set of functions that are interrelated but can change their position. So what happens is that the floating city can be shuffled to create a new relationship and a new linkage between the different functions. So when it's needed, you can really change the position of the different parts and functions of the cities. And actually this is happening already. This is a tower in the city of Rotterdam, and as you see, it's transported in another area were needed in that moment. So floating functions changing their position in relation to the needs. And this brings us to an important topic, that is the reuse of city applications. So the floating Dutchman was making reference, for example, to the Olympic Games. So every 4 years, one city has the big challenge to build huge and expensive constructions that after the Olympic Games probably will be abandoned and not used anymore. So the idea is to create floating construction in rich countries and then basically just rent the function, shipping them in the position when they are needed, and when they are not needed anymore, they can go back to the original country. And this is, I think, an interesting and inspiring idea for the situation in the Garda Lake. This because many different cities could be able to share some function, for example, some pavilion, some congress room, some sport facilities. The idea is that with floating function, different cities or towns in the Garda Lake could be able to share the same function, to relocate those in relation to a particular event or occasion. And this is really interesting also to limit the cost for the construction of these facilities. And of course, these facilities will need to run some electricity, some energy, and in the same way you can realize floating solar blanket fields to provide electricity for this particular event. So this is a real system that can allow you to provide a particular function in a particular moment of the year, at the same time sharing the cost allocated to the construction. Finally, I want to mention the last concept, that is providing instant green solutions. So the idea is that in our cities there is not much space for green anymore, and the water also in this case can be a good area where to locate new green areas. So this is a project, this is a sea tower, is a concrete tower that is enriched of a lot of many green elements and systems which interact with the fauna and the flora and are able to revitalize the ecosystems in the air but also in the water. So this is what happens. You have the city and you have this green area that improves the environmental quality of the city. And of course you can have more than one of these green towers, and in this way you can really change the environment within your city. And to this idea I want to switch to another project and mainly to a particular installation of the artist George Bacher. The title of this installation is In Search of Habitus, and as you can see it is a small aquarium where you can see a miniature forest floating in the water. So this artist is currently living in the Netherlands and is known for his architectonic sculptures and installation, often visualizing invisible forces of nature, such as wind or such as water, as in this case. This installation in particular, In Search of Habitus, consists of these floating bobbers containing miniature trees. The artwork challenges people to think about the relationship between themselves and their environment. So here there is a triangle between humans, their habitat, and the interaction between those two. And actually this idea, this installation was the inspiration for the company Mothership, which decided to carry out this idea in real life, creating a real project around this idea of In Search of Habitus. So, since we all want our cities to be greener, it's often quite hard to find a place in our cities. So why not turn our waterfronts or lakes to place for tree, to forest? So this is the idea and the inspiration behind this project in Rotterdam that is called the Bobbin Forest. And this is actually the new city park of the city, which is located in the old harbor of the city. So the Bobbin Forest consists of 20 different trees and is produced by a company called Mothership, which wants to ask attention for climate change, innovation, art, health in city, and the importance of a green environment in our urban system. So this project seems really simple, but actually required the collaboration of many different scientists, artists, and designers. The first big challenge was to decide the right species of tree, because not all the tree can resist with the movements of the sea. And of course, in this area, the salty water can attack the leaves. So the first option was that was a field maple, was actually not effective, and at the end, they decided to use the Dutch elm. That is the best choice because it is hard and it can resist actually to the salty water. Another huge problem was, for example, the selection of the earth to locate inside the buoys that were used, and the winning formula was a combination of earth and ultralight lava rock, which helped to regulate moisture and temperature. So for the realization of the project, it was decided to use mainly existing materials. So the 20 old sea buoys, so this one, were used and were taken from the North Sea and were adapted to carry these light trees. And because the trees play an important part in the sustainability and climate ambitions, the city of Rotterdam donated these 20 trees for the achievement and for the creation of this floating park, floating forest. And actually this is a nice story because in the city is always growing and changing, so the trees are constantly placed and replaced and removed. And usually when they are removed, these trees are destroyed. However, nowadays the municipality of Rotterdam owns a tree storage. So when the trees are removed, they are placed in this storage until they don't find a new relocation. So this is where those trees of the bobbing forest come from. But of course, another problem is how to water the trees, and here another huge studies was required, mostly because of the weight of this tractor. aquaponture. So the idea is that some students created a tank for 500 liters of water in the voice in this location, and in this way this tank can resist and can be refilled 4 times per year, providing the necessary water for this tree. So the idea is that this project won't raise also attention and awareness to the climate change problem, a bit showing also the effect of the possible effect of climate change in our cities if we don't act against it, so if we don't take any intervention. And about intervention, I want to mention another Dutch project idea developed by Ronald Waterman and Jaap Brouwer that is about aquapuncture, that of course related to the old technique of acupuncture. So how, in the same way as in acupuncture, you find some pressure point to revive a sick body. In the same way, you can select along waterways different locations in which implement some interventions, and in this way allow the change and revive the ecosystem and the environment. So aquapuncture looks at the implementation of methods that simultaneously strengthen the economy and improve the environment to achieve sustainability in the area. So this technique fits in as the key to promote regional socio-economic development while safeguarding environmental values and nature as well as nautical safety. So the idea is that in the past, the slow waterway system were really important for transportation, but with the arrival of fast road system along cities and lake, they were a bit abandoned and they were not used anymore as transportation systems until current days, because nowadays the waterways are becoming again increasingly important for tourism, recreation, and also for sport. At the same time, the significance of the waterfront along these waterways is for living, working, tourism, and infrastructure is coming back. The combination of attractive rivers and canals, the waterfronts, the landscape, and historic cities along and beyond the waterfronts is ideal for water-related tourism. So in this way, reviving this water system is possible to stimulate visitors to use the waterways for touristic purposes. At the same time, it is absolutely necessary that measures have to be taken to ensure both nautical safety, nature values, as well as water quality and quantity. In addition, mitigating measures must be taken with regard to negative effects of climate change. So these are the main principles behind the aquapuncture theory and definition. So this is the scheme that was developed by the two scientists about aquapuncture, that is really seen as an instrument to apply for the optimal use, adaptation and management of inland waterways and waterfront. The final objective is to obtain a blue-green economy for regional socio-economic and spatial development, while safeguarding navigability, environmental values and nature, as well as safety. Aquapuncture, of course, will continue to play a significant role in the total concept for achieving a smaller global footprint. So this is the main scheme used by the scientists, which include all the important points of aquapuncture. So you have the possible urban and rural characteristic, then the organization that needs to work together to achieve the change, then you the possible intervention of physical adaptation, and here you have the user group. So in this scheme you find all the elements to apply aquapuncture nowadays. In particular, I want to refer to the user group, and these two scientists find 6 different user groups that or potential user groups that should be related to the project and considered during the project. So we have commercial shipping for persons and goods, we have tourism and recreation, special nautical events, water-related sports, waterfront users and developers, and aquatic terrestrial flora and fauna and microorganisms. So these are the users to keep in mind while projecting an aquapuncture intervention. Then, of course, you have a true analysis of the urban and rural characteristic of the area and of the waterfronts, and this means that first of all the characteristic, history, typology and classification of the water system must be studied, followed by the study of the waterfronts and of the adjacent territories. So good plans have their roots in the past and are pointing towards the future. With regard to the waterfront, a study includes the presence and characteristic of residential areas, leisure parks, tourist and recreational facilities, for example, museums and monuments, and of course also agricultural areas, landscape and nature in general. So before everything you have to study the environment and the urban and rural characteristics of the area. Then you have some particular people in charge of the organization. So you have to create, for example, stakeholder participation, public and private partnership. You have to consider the societal cost and benefit and all these factors to achieve a real change using aquapuncture. And these are the possible intervention that you can achieve using a project of aquapuncture. So for example, you have some physical adaptation that can be building a bridge, removing a bridge, changing something in the water system. You can, for example, create a port or a harbor. You can enhance nautical safety. You can enhance spatial qualities, or you can improve the environmental measures for the environment and the ecosystem. So these are all the possible interventions that you can apply with aquapuncture projects, and of course the final objective is to achieve a good environment, but also an environment that is appreciated for tourism, so an attractive environment to revive the area. One of these researchers, and in particular Ronald Waterman, is also in charge of, or is following also the stream of building with nature principle. This is again a Dutch strategy, and it comes from the tradition of Dutch engineering and architectures, and in particular from the challenges encountered in the coastal zones, so in the areas where water and land meet. So this recent evolution of the skills of building in the coastal areas shows more attention to use inorganic and organic materials and forces present in nature to create a closer relationship between the land and the water. So an interchange in sometimes, and sometimes you have land in the water and water in the land. So to create a new relationship between the land system and the water system. So what happens is that the emphasis is no longer on inflexible solid structures like dams, dikes, but instead on flexible soft structures and solutions which are in harmony with the sea. And for example, I realized using sand, so they can be dunes or beaches. And these structures, of course, are not able to resist forever to the effect of the sea, so they can change and they can develop together with the surrounding nature. So they are real natural system. So the idea comes from the possibilities. So it's one of the possibility given when you have scarce land available for construction. So what happens is that in this case you have three special solutions apart from different three spatial solutions, so you can make better use of the third dimension, so using skyscrapers or underground constructions, or you can use better the space in the hinterland, or finally you can use actually the sea, so you can expand your vision towards the water system, making use of materials and forces interaction present in nature. And this is really close to the opinion of the first architect we have seen today, that is Cohen-Autius. So using the sea as a possible, or the water system, as a possible element for the expansion of our cities. So worldwide, these options are applied alone or in combination. In the Netherlands, there is a clear propension towards building with nature. That is a lot different than building in nature, but you really build with elements coming from the nature and able to interact with the nature in a different and natural way. So this principle was actually also applied in different areas. Here we are in Dubai with Palm Highlands. This is the inspiration. So the inspiration came from the projection and the shadow of a palm in the sea. And in this way it was decided to build this residence area with the shape of a palm. This is the project, that is a building with nature project, because the land was created thanks to sand nourishment. So sand was relocated to create the leaves of the palm. To avoid the effects of the currents and of the sea during the construction process, it was necessary to build also this wall, this protection wall, around the leaves. But at the same time, to maintain a clear and safe and healthy ecosystem in this part of water, two inlets were also built in this location to allow the exchange of water. So what happens is that here you build really with nature and not just in the nature, and of course these kind of systems are not forever, but they change following the normal changes in the environment. So actually you build also for change, and this can be also a good solution for some project in the future, because they are also related with the possible careless development, so not creating a stable and static construction. So with this project is all. I've tried to give you a vision about the possibilities nowadays to exploit the water systems to create innovative projects. And the technology is already there. It's just about changing the perception and creating really new innovative projects built to change with the dynamic society. So thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer to all your questions.
Bene, ci sono delle domande?
Coastal engineering is a particular branch of civil engineering which is in charge of...
Possiamo accendere la luce? Avete delle domande, dei dubbi? Come vedete qui il waterfront è la costruzione sull'acqua, è un nuovo waterfront sull'acqua, d'altronde dall'Olanda abbiamo tutte queste informazioni molto sconvolgenti per noi italiani, però interessanti perché potrebbero offrire alternative italianizzate, scusatemi, perdonatemi il termine. Tanto comunque lavoriamo sulla temporaneità, sulla trasformabilità, come ha detto anche il professore Tira ieri, perché è l'ideale per abbassare tantissimo l'impatto sull'ambiente. Vedo che ci sono anche i nostri studenti. Approfitto per dire, visto che mi hanno fatto delle domande i professionisti iscritti ieri, che potete iniziare a scegliere i tempi guardando il sito questo della Summer School e anche quello dell'architetto Sigurtà, il Front Project, così potete iniziare a lavorare, porre le questioni, scriveteci, ovviamente venite a trovarci, tanto noi su appuntamento possiamo incontrarci, chi è qui, chi ovviamente sarà distante potrà lavorare per email o per via Skype. Noi non assegniamo i temi, li facciamo scegliere, potete anche creare dei gruppi o lavorare da soli. Giuliana, tu hai altro da aggiungere?
Niente in particolare, semplicemente che ovviamente sono temi un po' forti, ma sono le sperimentazioni, le ultime sperimentazioni qui in Olanda, perché non ho avuto il tempo di presentarmi prima.
Esatto, sì, adesso.
Sì, ma sono appunto insegnante, ricercatrice in un'università di scienze applicate in Olanda, in particolare in una città chiamata Flessinga che si trova sulla costa. Ovviamente in questa zona la protezione della costa e anche l'addizione di nuovo terreno è fondamentale per l'Olanda, quindi ci sono progetti molto forti sperimentazioni, sicuramente dipendenti dal contesto locale, ma alcune tematiche possono sicuramente essere sfruttate anche in Italia, soprattutto in ogni caso, come diceva la professoressa Longo, c'è un forte accenno sempre alla reversibilità degli interventi, cioè tutto si può modificare, tutto si può adattare, perché l'importante è aumentare la possibilità delle nostre città di diventare resilienti al cambiamento e al futuro in generale. Quindi questa era un po', sarebbe stata l'introduzione, però è la conclusione. Vediamo.
Va bene, grazie. Allora Giuliana.
Grazie a voi, vi abbandono, ritorno a lezione.
Sì, e sei comunque disponibile per email eventualmente?
Certamente,
mettiamo la tua mail sul sito così possono contattarti privatamente gli iscritti.
Perfetto.
Va bene, grazie.
Buona giornata.
Buona giornata. Questo lo possiamo togliere. Adesso passiamo all'altro